Alright, I want to talk about something that is very close to my heart, and that is the concept of self-esteem. I think low self-esteem is a problem for so many people, and it can cause so many potential problems. So we're going to talk about those potential problems, and we'll also talk about some ways to make sure your self-esteem is not only high, but also accurate. Before we do that though, let's make two distinctions between terms that are often confused with self-esteem. The first is narcissism. Some people are raised or told the idea that you can't really feel good about yourself, that pride is a bad thing. That's not at all what we want to say in positive psychology. You want to feel good about yourself. It's okay to feel good about yourself. It's okay to like yourself. That's not the same thing as narcissism. Narcissism involves overly projecting how awesome you think you are, always talking about your accomplishments, always making conversations about you. That's something very different from self-esteem. And in fact, narcissism, it's believed, is a result of low self-esteem. So the idea is someone who has narcissism is actually feeling so poorly about themselves, they have to convince other people, and therefore also themselves, that they are worthy, that they are good. So saying that you feel good about yourself, that you like yourself, that is not narcissism. It's something we want to achieve, and it's high self-esteem. Self-esteem is also confused with the concept of self-concept. Let me explain. Self-concept is the way you think about yourself. It's your cognitions, it's the words you attach to yourself. So maybe you're a successful student, maybe you're a successful parent, maybe you have a list of accomplishments. But that's not the same thing as self-esteem either. A lot of people are surprised, some not so much, to find out that you can be very successful and not feel good about it at all. Some folks with low self-esteem think that all their accomplishments are actually because of fate or luck, so they don't really feel good about anything they've done. And they'll focus on the things that they haven't been successful at. So self-esteem is not narcissism, and it's not self-concept. It can be related, but it's not the same thing. Now let's talk about 4 potential negative consequences of low self-esteem, just to see how far-reaching this problem can be. The first, pretty obvious, these are the psychological effects. Low self-esteem is associated with lots of mental concerns, depression, anxiety, lots of different issues that can come about because you don't feel good about yourself. And so that can present itself in a number of psychological ways. It can also present itself in a number of behavioral ways. It can actually change the way you live your life, and not for the better. Someone with low self-esteem may not put themselves in social situations. They may feel like people won't like them. They're not deserving of good things. Maybe they won't try activities they're interested in because they assume they'll fail. They won't be good enough. Also, maybe they talk so poorly about themselves that it can make other people uncomfortable. So there's a lot of behavioral consequences that come as a result of having low self-esteem. The next is physical. This might be the first one where you go, physical? How can low self-esteem have physical effects? Well, when you think about just your daily living, it takes some effort sometimes to live a healthy life, to eat well, to exercise, to make sure you go to the doctor if you're sick. But if someone doesn't feel good about themselves, those low self-esteem feelings may prevent them from thinking they're worth going to the doctor for treatment, or that it really doesn't matter how I treat my body because I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. So low self-esteem can actually have physical concerns attached to it as well. And then finally, financial consequences. If you have low self-esteem, you may not apply for jobs that you could actually have. You may not think you'd get them, so you never try. You may not present yourself in situations where people notice you, and you may make poor financial decisions to kind of cope with that low self-esteem. Sometimes people will spend lots of money in other ways to kind of boost their self-esteem, to kind of repress those feelings as a coping mechanism of some sort. Obviously, not so good for your financial situation, and then that can become a loop. Actually, any of these can become a loop where you don't feel good physically, in a financial situation that's positive, behavioral issues are a concern, and so it's just this low cycle of low self-esteem. So something else I want to stress is that while some people are very aware of their low self-esteem feelings, not everybody is. And this is sometimes the case with adolescents, with teenagers. Teenagers are going through a lot of things. You're going through different hormonal changes, different social situations. Maybe you moved out of your house and now you're independently living. It can be very, very stressful. So sometimes there's so much going on that unless you're really looking inward and being reflective, you may not notice that you actually are continually putting yourself down. One of the things that I would do in my brief time as a counselor was to have people put a little notebook, or in today's world, I guess you could use a phone, where every time you have a low thought about yourself or a bad thought about yourself, you write that down. And some people are shocked to see how much they actually put themselves down throughout the day. So sometimes we want to be able to reach out and help those people who aren't aware of their low self-esteem. And there's a few things that you can look for, especially in adolescence, and I'm going to tell you about 3. The first is low energy. Again, self-esteem is related to depression, and depression is often related to low energy. So not participating in activities that they might enjoy, sleeping more, feeling tired a lot, any of that can be related to low self-esteem. Also, unwanted shyness. Now, we have to be careful here because there's nothing wrong with being an introvert. Sometimes we think if you're not an extrovert in the life of the party, there's something wrong with you. Some folks are perfectly fine just having close relationships with a few people. That's not the same thing as unwanted shyness. This is when you want those relationships, you want to reach out, but you just feel like you can't, so you don't. So it's a little bit different than being an introvert. Unwanted shyness can be a consequence of low self-esteem or something to look out for. And then the third is giving into social pressure. Again, if you don't feel good about yourself, sometimes you seek the approval of other people so much that you'll lose sight of your identity, you'll lose sight of who you are just to get that affirmation. So this is sometimes why we'll see teenagers engage in drug-related culture and behaviors, and violent behaviors, because it's that sense of unity where these people like me, I can feel good about myself. As long as you're doing good things, that's fine. But unfortunately, sometimes that conformity leads us into negative consequences. Kind of related to that is something that we really have to talk about with teenagers and self-esteem, and that's bullying. Obviously, it's been a problem for a very long time, and in today's world, cyberbullying is even more of an issue. Anyone all over the world can get behind their computer and say something terrible to you and make you feel bad about yourself. So especially as adults and parents who are looking out for teenagers, we want to have open conversations about bullying. The website stopbullying.gov reported that almost half of all children in grades 4 through 12 have reported being bullied at least once in the last month. Again, one of the key words there is reported. A lot of times children who are being bullied don't talk about it. I was bullied in school and I never told anybody about it, just because of, again, those feelings of low self-esteem, not feeling like you're worth it, like it matters, like anyone will help you. So we have to be proactive. We have to make sure that the people in our lives are all talking about bullying, and make sure that you're talking with your children and your teenagers to see if it's going on. The last thing I want to say is, how do we boost our self-esteem? Well, in this class I'm going to hopefully give us so many positive musical messages that can really touch us and move us and make us feel good about ourselves. But the one little caveat that you have to watch out for is that feedback that's inaccurate, even if it's positive, does not boost our self-esteem. So sometimes we feel compelled to take someone who's feeling bad and just gush at them with compliments and throw so much positivity their way. We got to be careful, because if we tell them something that's not accurate, it can have actually a very negative impact on their self-esteem. I'll give you an example. I love to sing, but I'm by no means the best singer in the world. But I've seen people, especially when American Idol was in its heyday, whose families and friends had convinced them that they were just the most amazing singers in the world. And so these people would sometimes quit their jobs and go audition on American Idol season after season, and the producers would think they were hilarious as to how bad they were, so they'd put them on the air. So now you have someone who literally thought that they were a great singer, and they'd gotten this self-esteem boost from everyone in their life, but now millions of people are making fun of them online and on television because it wasn't really authentic feedback. So I'm not saying, to give negative feedback. That's really not the same thing. But make sure you find people's individual strengths. Everybody has strengths. Everybody has characteristics that are unique to us, skills that we're good at, even if they're not obvious to society. So again, it's really up to us to help each other find those accurate strengths and then to give that positive feedback. Because when you feel good about who you really are, then that's when you really feel good about yourself.